All right, so I'm going to try to connect my two squares. Pretend that you're making a big blanket, and my cat's about ready to come over. Hi! Aria, why do you have to come in my videos every time? No! All right, go on. Go on. I'm going to try to connect a couple of my mosaic squares. So we have this fringe on the ends. And let's say you wanted to make a blanket out of all these squares. These edges obviously are fine because they're straight, there's no fringe, you just connect them just like you'd connect other squares. Top edge, same thing. It's these side edges. If it's the very edge of the blanket, it could be fine if you want the fringe, but this is to the sides where they're going to be on the inside and they're going to connect together. This is my ohm symbol square, and this one is my lotus square. So what I've done, I'm going to kind of experiment. I'm going to connect this edge to this edge. I started by stitching a single crochet next to this outer border. When we first stitch up, this is the side we start on the right side. So you have your single crochet that locks the stitches together. Then you have this border stitch, which is basically a front loop double crochet. And then for my squares, you'll have this inner border stitch, which is the color A, another front loop double crochet. So we can either go in to the stitch between the starting single crochet and the double crochet, or you could go into the stitch, well, it's more like the knots. There's a couple places you can go into. If you go into this outer stitch right here, it's not really a stitch, I'm not sure how to describe it. It's basically the single crochet that you started with. If you stitch there, you're going to see these little color changes. So if you don't want to see these color changes, you're going to want to go into this next stitch, which is basically between the front loop double crochet and the starting single crochet. So you'll want to try to look for those, the little holes that you'll go into. So what I did on this one is I did a single crochet sort of on the surface, and I can kind of show you where I did this. Going close. I did it in the holes that were between the starting single crochet and this first front loop double crochet. There's no right or wrong, you just have to be consistent. So when you go in, if you can kind of see where I placed my stitches, you're basically looking for the holes that are between each of these stitches, and it's going to be 2 stitches per double crochet because technically there are 2 stitches underneath there. One of the holes I like to go into is the hole between the 2 front loop double crochets of the border. The other hole is going to be right in the middle somewhere, and again, just be consistent. If you kind of open up the stitch, you can kind of see where there's some splits. So I went between the 2 front loop double crochets, and then I went below, I guess to the right of that color A color, and then I went to the next hole between the 2 front loops, and then my next stitch was again right below or to the right of that next color. So let me show you. These 2 are going to go together this way. So we already have this one stitched up. So I want to do the same thing on this side. So I'm going to turn it so that I can start here and work my way across here. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn the square to the side that I need to stitch into. So I'm going to start with again, you could go into the stitches that are just on above these other little, you can kind of see the holes between each starting single crochet. If you do that, you're going to see these little dots from both colors, and because the background row is in this color, you might not want to see the dots of the A color row. So I'm going to be doing that this way. I'm going to assume that you don't want to see those double color dots. So yeah, you can either stitch into these holes right here, or you want to stitch more into, if you split them open, you can kind of see some areas where you can stitch. So I'm going to start with my standing single crochet on the edge. And I'm going to look for the stitch that's closer to the front loop than where the starting, that little dot is. Oh, and my cat's trying to get my yarn. So if you split this open, you see how there's the front part, there's this back loop here, then you have this front loop double crochet. I want to go into this hole right here because I want it to be in the right spot to line up. So that's my first one. Second one, I'm going to go underneath this color A and just kind of work my way to, so I'm not catching this loop that got pulled. And each, actually let's just go here. It's going to be a little weird. You're going to have to kind of, after the first couple, you'll figure out what's what. But so I did that one. I'm going to go back into the hole I came out of, and this time I'm going to go to the next little section. You just want to make sure you're doing a stitch. Go back into the same hole you came out of. Do the next one. You want to make sure you're accounting for every stitch. So it kind of doesn't matter where the stitches go, as long as you're not forgetting anything. Here we go. If I work it around a little, I can kind of find where that's at. Because I'm trying to basically stitch in between this border and these starting crochets. But I don't want to miss any. Oh, see, that one I did the wrong spot. That's what I'm talking about. We have to account, we have to get in between this without it showing. Oh, this is really funky. Sometimes you can go in between. Well, in this case, I think I'm just going to go there. This isn't as critical as it may seem like, because this border is just going to, oh, that screwed up that border. And you'll see that one side may work better than the other side. So I'm basically trying to get 2 stitches per everywhere I see a front loop double crochet, I want to try to get 2 stitches in there. So I'm just, you kind of see a pattern after a while. And the other side was easier for me doing this. The other side was, if you look at the square, this is actually the left side of the square that I'm stitching, because on the other one that I want to connect it to, it was the right side. The right side looks a little different as you're stitching because, you know, when you crochet, they're not always exactly the same because you're going in one direction, and so yeah, we're gonna go ahead and finish this up. And I think the main thing is it's probably not as critical where you place this stuff as long as you're consistent. And so I'm just going in, and everywhere that I end the stitch, when I bring my hook through, I put my hook back in to start the next one. And so I came out here, so I'm gonna put it back in there. What you might want to do, if you know you're going to be putting a lot of these squares together, I would repeat this very next stitch after you're starting single crochet. This is a front loop double crochet in the B color, at least on my squares. You may want to repeat this stitch 3 times. That way you have 3 different, it's thicker. So you'd have like 3 of these in one, you know, like a border. That gives you a little more room to work with. And then at the end, when you get to the end, you just repeat that last front loop double crochet 3 times or whatever amount. You know, if you know you're going to be doing that, you know, creating a pillow or creating, putting 2 together, like a block Afghan, I would probably just add extra to the edges. So yeah, I'm just kind of working my way through here. Again, being consistent as far as which part of the stitches I grab. And there's no right or wrong. We're just kind of creating a barrier that shows let me turn it this way so you can see in the light. It's basically blocking off all this, you know, multiple color mess, and then it's kind of blocking off this, it's creating a little wall between the pretty first, you know, border stitch and then all the different color changes. So I'm going to finish this all the way across. And again, you're going to want to make sure you have 2 stitches per every front loop double crochet that you see here. You may have the fringe in the way, it doesn't matter. We can pull that out at the end. This is just creating this sort of a foundation for our next row. And get this mess out of my way here. This surface single crochet is going to be what we're going to build a little bit of a border on. And then we're going to attach those 2 borders together. But I'm experimenting with how to do the back. Normally when you have a bunch of like granny squares or something, you might do this same thing where you create this border around the square block, and then you would connect all the borders together to create your blanket. Once you do a few, you kind of get a feel for the pattern that you're, you know, where the parts of the stitch are that you need to stitch into the holes. Because if you look at it, it looks pretty nice and neat where that border lines up with this surface crochet. So let's keep going, we're almost done. I want to make sure I account for 2 stitches for every one of these double crochets, these front loop double crochets. Otherwise you lose one of your stitches and then it doesn't line up with the other one. I'm just going to count these really quick before I stop. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, well I have one too many stitches. That's fine. We'll fix it later. So in this top one, I'm just gonna go through both up here. In my squares, I have 45 rows. So that's what we're going off of here, is 45 stitches for the row. Okay, so now that I'm done with that, I'm going to chain 2. So this is totally however you want to do. You can go with, you know, 3 or 4 rows of single crochet. You can go, I'm going to go with 1 row of half double crochets, and I'm going to do the front loop, because what this will do is create this little ridge on the side that looks really nice with the border. And I'll show you on the other one. So it creates this nice little ridge. It's not really a ridge, I'm not sure what it's called, but this little line that's next to the border. I think it just looks kind of nice. It looks a little neater. The whole thing lies a little flatter too. It just seems to lie smoother. Because the surface crochet kind of wants to go up this way, this tends to help it fold down better. I like the half double crochet because it's a little thicker and I only have to do 1. I don't have to do 2 rows of single crochets. So what I'm doing is I'm kind of folding this way so I can get to the right angle here. And I'm just going to do in the front loop, not both loops, half double crochets. So I changed 2, I turned, and now we're just going to do a bunch of half double crochets in our stitches. Because I have 1 more on this row, I may want to do like 2 together, if I can figure out where it went. But we can even do that while we stitch them together. That part's not as critical. So just work your way through all the stitches. And again, this is your own preference, what stitches you want to use. I just like the half double because it's a little bit faster because it's 1 row instead of 2 rows. And again, I like the front loop because it gives me a nice little edge here. You don't have to do the front loop, you can do both loops if you want. It's totally up to you. With these borders, you're going to want to go with a color that sort of goes with both squares, or all the squares. If you have multiple color squares, sometimes a nice neutral color, like black, dark gray, maybe cream or white. Or if they all have one color in common, let's say you have this, you know, turquoise color in every single square that you've done, maybe use this, you know, the same color. So that's up to you as well. Sometimes a totally different color from what you've done. Let's say you did a whole bunch of squares in like cream and charcoal. So let's say you have cream and like some kind of a charcoal color or something. Maybe for the border you might just throw a crazy purple color or red or something just to kind of mix it up a little. It's kind of fun to play with colors, and you could just do this one border and just kind of look at it, go, oh, that works really well, or oh, that looks terrible, and then just take it out. Just use one square to see if it works together or not. So again, I am just going through, doing a front loop, half double crochet to my starting surface single crochet. And it's a little weird because you get, you do have this fringe kind of in the way, but if you just kind of fold it over, let it kind of hang. Oops, I got both loops there, don't want to do that. One perk of doing more than one of these first front loop double crochets is that when you're stitching between them you could actually stitch between the 2 front loop double crochets rather than trying to go between the front loop double crochet and that starting single crochet. And just, you know, plan to have that one extra that'll be hidden. So if you have 3 front loop double crochets and, oops, I messed that one up. You know you're going to stitch between the first 2, that means only 2 of those front loop double crochets will show. So that's another option. Don't mind all the cat hair. Sometimes it's my hair and sometimes it's the cat's hair. If you're doing a block afghan where you're going to have stuff connected, sides, bottoms, tops. Sometimes for squares they'd have you just do a border all the way around the whole square. But in this case, I think I would just do the borders in between the two squares. Join the two squares together, which we'll do by stitching these two together. And then, once all my squares are joined together, I can stitch along this whole entire side in one swoop. So do all your side pieces first to make these strips, and then just do your whole entire top edge. You can do your whole entire bottom edge. So that's also something to keep in mind as far as your planning. So I have my two right sides together. I have my little strips lined up. So now I'm just going to take, you see how you have this, the top of your half double crochets on both sides. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. You can either crochet through the whole entire thing. If I can get it here. You can either crochet through both loops together, or what looks kind of nice, some people like to crochet on the inside loops only. So that would be through this loop and through that loop. You could do the two outside loops. If you do that, it will create this little ridge in the middle. And actually, I think I'm going to do it that way. So instead of going right sides together, let's go the wrong sides together. You might want to kind of hold this up so that the fringe falls down on both sides. Okay, so I'm doing these wrong sides together, lining up my half double crochets. I'm going to go on the inside loops because when I open this back up, it'll look like kind of this three ridge connection, which actually I think looks really cool. Remember, I'm going to go on the inside. I have one too many, so I'm not going to worry about this first one. I'm just going to go in this inside loop. Boop, get in there. And then this one, I'm going to look for the inside loop. And now I'm going to do my starting crochet. And I'm just doing single crochets for this. I just did a standing one. Got a bunch of tails. We won't worry about these right now. So now I'm just going to do the inside loops together. As you go, they'll get easier because they'll line up a little better. And just do a single crochet. You know, I think I'm doing with half double crochets. I might be doing the wrong inside loop. Well, as long as you're consistent, that's the main thing. Yeah, I think I'm doing the wrong inside loop. You want to make sure with half double crochets you have kind of like three little loops. You got that one, and that one. So I'm going to go on this top one here. Once you start your loop, it'll be easy to get to the next one. Again, it's just consistency. If I look here, I have a ridge here, and I have a ridge here, and those ridges will line up once I get done with this. So we just want to make sure we're going in the same loop for both sides, and that we're not skipping any, we're not doing two in one. And so I'm going to do this all the way across. And I think I have one extra stitch in one of these squares, so I may just, when I get about halfway through the square, I might go ahead and count my remaining stitches, and then somewhere you could just kind of do two together on one side so that they match up. This part you've probably done before with other types of block afghans, granny squares. These joins, you can do this however you want. I like this look that I'm doing, but some people don't like the ridge in the middle of the seam, so you might go right sides together and do the full stitch, or just do the back loops, which when you flip it over is actually the front loops. So just join together your square however you want on this front side. We still have the fringe to deal with on the back, but this is just the first step. And this is pretty typical of any kind of block afghan that you're joining together. I'm not going full afghan with this. I'm actually going to just make a little wall hanging. I may put 4 all together or just 3 in a row. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, just be consistent with whatever you're doing so that it looks nice, because obviously you want your seams to look nice. So I'm going to keep going. But this is why we wanted to have consistent stitches on the edges, because we want to make sure that these line up right. And when we open this up, they'll look similar. Again, your right side will look a little different from your left side as you're doing that initial surface crochet, single crochet. But as long as it looks nice at the end, the ends justify the means, so to speak. All right, so we're about 2/3 of the way done. I'm going to count what I have left. So let's see, I got 1, 2, as I pull this up a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, plus the corner. On this one, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I have 1 less here than I do on this side. So I may do a 2 together here, but a 1 here. So I think I'll just do that next. No matter how good you count, it seems like this always happens. So I'm going to go here. And 1 more here. And then do my next loop here. Oops, make sure I don't get these extra little bits. No one's going to even be able to know. It'll blend in. You won't even see it. Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere I somehow added an extra stitch on the edge here. Again, this was my left side. This was my right side. The right side was a bit easier. Just to how the stitches line up. So I'll just continue to the edge. And then we'll want to fasten this off. This yarn seems a little splitty. I think this was a cheap Michael's, is it Craft Smart? I don't know. It was a big old like 1 pound roll, or maybe 14 ounces. And it was super cheap. So, and it's a great color. I like the color, but it's a little splitty. But just take your time, stitch by stitch. There's no rush, there's no race. And we'll just get to the end. Do I still have 1 extra stitch? How did I do that? Well, there's 3 here. I'm gonna just go do 2 together again because I think I messed up. I may have missed a stitch. Sometimes the underneath square, it's easy to miss stitches. Anyway, no one's gonna see that. No one's gonna know. And my last one. Let's see again, I seem to have 1 too many, so I'm just gonna do a 2 together. Don't know what I did. But no one's gonna really know once this is all done. You're just not gonna notice. This one I'm gonna just kind of go through a couple loops here. And go through all, fasten off. Okay, let me fasten this off, and now when I open this up, I think this is a pretty seam. It kind of lays flat. There's a little bit of a ridge right here in between, but I kind of like it. Some people might like the look of it this way instead. So if you did the right sides together and did that exact same thing, don't mind that, that's where the yarn kind of split. this is what it would look like if you had done right sides together, that same technique. Going in the, let's see, if it's right sides together, you would have gone into the back loops as opposed to the front loops. Depends on which loop you go into. It just makes a whole bunch of different, what do you call it, patterns. So that's the back. That's the front. Super common way to join stuff. So that part's done. So now, what do we do with all this fringe? That's the part that I've been trying to figure out what works the best. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to tie these together. I have an idea. I don't know what it's going to do, but let's just try it. I'm going to tie, this was the fastening off from this square, and this was the fastening off from this square, so I'm just going to tie these together into a double knot. So I'm thinking like, I don't know, macrame maybe? So what I want to do now is, oh, and there's another one. I have an idea. I'm not sure if it'll work. I don't even know what this goes to. I hope it doesn't go to anything. So I'm going to take my knots, and if you fold these over, kind of, you see where the two, you have all this fringe. So I kind of have a weird idea. I'm not sure if it's going to work. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my top two knots from the top of these squares before I ever did the border. So what I'm thinking on doing these is I'm thinking of sort of a weird knot tying, sort of macrame-esque technique. So I'm going to take my top two, and again, I am experimenting. I do not know if this is going to work or not. But if I have these go underneath and then tie on top. And a double knot. And then the next ones go underneath. Basically crossing them underneath, laying this down over it. And hold it down with your pinky and tie a knot over the top. You can try a double knot or just a single knot. I'm not sure if this is going to work, so I'm going to do a single knot. I don't even know if that's what you call a knot. Lay it up, tie it, take my next two, cross over, lay it over it. My hope is that this will look like a weird little braid. Tie it. Put those in there with it. Pull the whole thing up. Cross these over, the next two. Lay that on top. Which one was it? Where's the other one? Did I cross the other one? Oh, it got stuck. There we go. I crossed the next two. Push it down with my pinky. Tie the knot. I'm kind of tying tight, but then I'm sort of, you don't want this to buckle up on you, but yeah, you just kind of want to see, make it sort of lay flat, but not, you know, like buckle and tighten. So now I'm going to pull this up, cross my next two. That was part of, is that part of that one? This is my B rows, so I think that's already part of that one. So you also want to keep track of your, cross my next row, lay it on top. As you go, this is going to get fatter and fatter, but that's why I think these knots might help to keep it sort of down. You might kind of work it up a little bit. And again, you may want to do a double knot just to be safe. Okay, so bring these up a little bit. Take your next two, cross them over. Lay them flat. And you know, this is going to take time, but it may take less time than trying to weave in all these ends, which is what I'm going for. So I'm just going to do a double knot. Pick these up. It's getting fatter and fatter. Cross your next two over. Get the other ones out of the way. Lay it over the top. And as you go, you want to kind of make sure the knots are sort of evenly spaced. Double knot. You kind of work it. So I'm going to have this ridge, and I don't know. This is the back of the blanket. Maybe the ridge isn't what you want for the back of the blanket, but it doesn't look horrible. I don't know. Again, this is an experiment. So as we go, we're going to have more and more of this. So our next ones are going to cross over, lay it on top. Make sure you get all those ends. That's the key here, is trying to get all these ends situated. Because I'm doing these double knots, these aren't really going to go anywhere. I think you could wash this, and everything within here I think will stay. So as you tie them, bring those into your current mess. Lift it up, cross your next two, lay it over it, tie a knot around everything, and I'm kind of pulling tight. The tighter you pull, you know, it'll keep them sort of situated. Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. Try to get all my little edges. Now my next two, I'm going to cross over each other. Don't cross over the wrong ones. Cross over, lay over. I see a little bit of ends here that are probably from the very top. Tie really tight. Eventually, these ends will be done and not be in this ridge anymore. And you'll have about the same thickness going all the way down. But, you know, there's just a lot here. And again, we are trying to avoid weaving all these suckers in. So this is a sort of a quick and dirty way to maybe deal with these. So I'm going to keep doing this. Eventually, some of these little things will be up higher so they won't be in the way. Lay these over each other. The big hot mess over the top of that. Bring these together. Double knot. The next one. That one went through the little loop on my starting thing, so just you can pull them out as you get to them. Okay, so next one. Cross these over. You can see them. So I got my little next row here. I got this one crossing over this one. Lay down the bulk of it on top. Tie the knot. Try to do it straight across from each other, not where it's going too far down or too far up. Again, we're going to lift these up. Cross the next two over. Lay it on top. Don't get that mixed up. Tie this knot. Just for fun, because we got about halfway done. So this is the ridge of the knots. It's getting a little thicker as we go. Got a little bit of an edge sticking out. Kind of is about that thick. So I don't know, it's the back of the blanket. The front looks like this. It's gonna make this stick up a little bit. So that is one idea. That would work if you really don't want to deal with the ends. You could try this, I don't know what to call it, tying technique, tying ridge technique. Creates this ridge. In a blanket, maybe it's fine, maybe it's too much. It was an idea that I had. Another idea I had was to try to braid them like macrame, but with these short edges, I'm not sure how that would work. You almost might want to have longer edges. There's a flat macrame woven braid type of thing that where you just kind of keep adding more and more to your strings, where you just kind of weave them in and out. I'm not a macrame person, but I thought about trying to do a thing where you're weaving them in and out. But with all these edges, you'd have to work your way down. The other technique is do these same things on the back. Instead of doing the holes you did before, go in between the very top of this stitch. So if you kind of flip this up, you can see there are holes between each knot where you started the row or ended the row, either way. If you do one of these things, whether it's half double crochet, single crochet, do a surface crochet here, and then maybe the same, since it's a little bit shorter, maybe do a surface crochet and then a row of single crochet. Do the same on this one. Oh, see, that got stuck in there too. And so this one you'd go, not where your previous one was, but in just the little holes that are where the starting crochets are, or ending, depending on what side you're on. So create yourself a little ridge here, maybe 2 single crochets high. So the starting one, and then another row. You'll have a couple little flaps like this, and you just basically put the flaps over all this stuff. Kind of lay these in this little canal here, and your flaps would go, let's see, these are your flaps, and they'd go over, and you'd stitch them together. That's another idea. One thing I thought would be maybe cool is tie these together first before you do that, so they're laying the right direction, and then trim off. So like you'd tie, you know, these beginning ones together. This is 2 because this side was my starting side. Tie them together just loosely. Go row by row. Tie them together so that it's the right width that matches the front. You could trim these a lot smaller. Like just trim these to about that, you know, maybe an inch or so. So they're smaller, they'd fit in this little canal, and then you could tie your little, sew your little flaps together the same way I did on that other side. So yeah, that was my experiment. What do we call this? Knotting ridge, knotty ridge? Failed experiment. Anyway, I thought I'd try it. I'm not sure if I'm liking it. It's an idea. Probably the best way is what I just said. I would tie these together first, row by row, match up each tie. I think that just forms a little stronger join. Then trim these a little bit shorter so you don't have all this bulky stuff in the middle. And then yeah, just you could even stitch your ridges before you you know, did all that stuff. Like stitch them first while you still have this loose edge. You could actually go straight up through. You can kind of look and see the holes here. Just go straight up through these holes, stitch in between, like right in between. But again, do it this way so it's a surface. And then go in between each one of these, one by one. And just stitch yourself a row of a surface crochet and then another crochet, single crochet. I don't think you'd need a half double crochet from here. So anyway, that, I thought I'd try it, film it, see if it would work. But that's the basic premise of joining your squares. The front part's easy. Yeah, it's that back part that's a little weird. So good luck.